Studio today by Craig Burley and Stevie Nicol. We also welcome to the programme Frank Leboeuf and Gab Marcotti. Our focus today, of course, the penultimate round of group matches in the Champions League. And one big story breaking, of course, Juventus out. After qualifying for the knockout stages in 8 straight seasons, a 4-3 defeat against Benfica means they will not be going through to the next round of the Champions League. It has been a disastrous season up to now for them, Gab. This a new low.
Yeah, it's a new low. I mean, you thought losing to Maccabi Haifa would be the new low, but, Juve kind of said, hold my beer. We don't even... looks like they might miss out on the Europa League as well. This was a game where at one stage they were 4-1 down. I don't think it would have been an exaggeration if they'd given up 6, 7, 8 goals. And it was interesting, Allegri, I think, raising the metaphorical white flag with 20 minutes to go, taking off Vlahovic and Kostic, presumably to save them for the big Serie A game against Lecce this weekend, and sending on 2 kids. Like Sule and Ealing Jr. And then this guy, Ealing Jr., all of a sudden, he looks phenomenal out on the wing. And they claw it back to 4-3. And, no, that wasn't a planned substitution. That's not managerial genius. If anything, that's further evidence that whatever he was doing until that point was a bad mistake, like a lot of his tactics this season.
How bad were they today, Steve?
Well, they got completely and utterly outplayed and outfought. So it doesn't really get any worse than that. I mean, I'm in no doubt that the spin will be, well, they showed great character from being 4-1 down. They came back to 4-3, and but for a missed header, it could have been a point. But honestly, I wonder how Allegri's holding on to his job.
Yeah.
Because from game to game, it just seems to get worse and worse, which didn't seem possible. But this is a new low. As Gab said, could have been 8 easily. They're lucky it wasn't, but how Allegri's hanging on to his job, I have no idea.
I don't think there's going to be anybody, though, Stevie, in Turin spinning that yarn about how we were unlucky.
Mr. Sunshine.
I don't think there'll be many people traipsing up and down the city centre in Turin going, well, we were a bit unfortunate today, so we'll crack on.
I was trying to figure out how they can not sack the guy and how they can come up with a reason not to sack him. Right. That's the only thing I can come up with. Because other than that, he deserves it.
Finances.
They've been embarrassing.
Finances, I think.
That's the thing, isn't it, Gab? It's all down to money.
I think so at this stage. It's down to money. Obviously he signed a multi-year deal. He's the highest paid manager in Serie A. I think he's one of the 6 or 7 highest paid in Europe. And, this is a team that lost, I think, something like 350 million over the last couple of years as a club. And obviously a lot of it down to the pandemic, a lot of it down to overspending and bad decisions before that. But I just really think they don't know where to go mid-season were they to sack him. Do you look for a long-term answer right away? Do you try to get somebody just to see if you can take a run at the top 4 finish? So they've hoped that ultimately Allegri would get them back. But, even in Serie A, they've had serious issues before. These last 2 victories against Torino and Empoli. They're a mess defensively. And the alibi of the injuries, Pogba will be back at some point, and Di Maria and whatever, and Chiesa's been out. It's not going to fly because people can look at them and see we're not playing well. We're making stupid mistakes. It's not just a couple attacking players or all of a sudden we're going to turn into somebody who scores 4 or 5 goals a game, and it doesn't matter what we do defensively. It doesn't matter what we do in midfield. Nobody's buying that.
How broken is this club, Gab?
Well, so the good news, if you're a Juve fan, is that you have a very, very deep-pocketed family group behind you. So you're not going to go bust. They will continue.
Well, just sack Allegri then, surely, Gab. If they've got that deeper pockets, just sack him and move on.
Well, that's not going to solve your problem vis-a-vis financial fair play, though, is it? Which, is back this season. So they also have to pay attention to that. I think they need a radical rethink. And, you know, when they thought they had one with Sarri and they didn't quite commit to it, and then I thought with Pirlo, actually things weren't as bad. With hindsight, they weren't as bad as they've become, with them throwing, you know, good money after bad on veteran free agents who then get injured and never play. I'm looking at you, Di Maria. So, you know, they've made this investment in some young players. They've brought other young players in. Gatti, who started tonight, obviously, you know, made a mistake perhaps on the first goal, but showed character at the end. They've got Locatelli, they've got the kid Miretti. You know, they put together this under-23 side, which was supposed to be this wonderful reserve of talent for them. Well, we hardly ever see these guys. When we did see them, again, 20 minutes ago, when we saw Sule and who's from Argentina, and Ealing Jr., of course, who's English, he believes an under-20 international. When we saw them on, they made a difference. So, you know, maybe it'll get into Allegri's head that, hey, how about we find out if some of these youngsters can play?
But it's not really a shock, is it?
Well, not from what we've seen already this season.
We're sitting here, it's not like we walk in and then go, Juventus are out. Oh my God, that's a shock. How did that happen?
They did battle back from 4-1.
Yeah. I just honestly, at the moment, the way they're playing, they're a bit of an afterthought, aren't they?
Yes,
really? I mean,
very much.
It's such a mess. I mean, we've got Barcelona tomorrow. They're not out yet, but they will be. Maybe that's a little bit more of a shock, but not a huge one when you look at their back line. And there's just so many problems here in Italy for this team. And for this manager, and you know, you look at the two. Gab said he's one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid in Italy and around the globe. You know, for a guy who plays that kind of pragmatic style, you've got Simeone as well. We've talked about him. It's not very exciting. These guys are getting paid fortunes, but yet they just can't seem. Okay, they've had relative success playing a certain way, but is that how much is that way of playing watering the mouth and of everybody who watches the game now? And how much success are teams getting by playing that way? That's one of my questions.
It's not just that, Craig, and I know how much you love expected goals, so you'll love this one. Allegri's defenders point to the number of goals conceded in Serie A, and they say, oh, look, we have the second, Juve still have the second best defense in Serie A in terms of goal conceded. Well, this is a team that's way overperforming XG in terms of goals conceded. They've conceded 6. XG says they should have conceded 12, which on top of that, I think to me suggests things are bound to get worse as they regress to the mean as well, defensively too. And you saw that tonight in Europe where, you know, I think at least 3 of the Benfica goals were just down to very poor defending.
Next up for Juventus in the Champions League, their final game of the... Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.